Okay, so you may have gotten a notice that we are recording. You can just hit accept.
It's the next slide, I think.
Yes.
Okay, so as Julie just mentioned, this meeting will be both in English and Spanish. If you want to listen to the Spanish version, as soon as the host will enable interpretation, you will see that interpretation icon at the bottom. Just click on that and choose Spanish or English in your case. In case someone speaks Spanish, you'll be able to hear the interpreters. Entonces, para las personas que desean escuchar esta reunión, este evento en español, va a aparecer en unos segundos cuando van a habilitarlo. Va a aparecer el icono en la parte de abajo de su computador, donde está el círculo acá. Pueden hacer clic ahí y escojan español. Y también solo quería recordarles si van a presentar que no hable tan rápido. Just wanted to remind the presenters to please be mindful of the live interpretation. Just be mindful with your pace. Thanks.
Thank you, Erica. I have added you as an interpreter. So hopefully folks can select that. If you will just bear with us. My colleague, Dira, is also in the meeting. And please reach out to Dira if you have any issues, technical issues. Let's see, Dira, I will ask you if you don't mind to also add Carolina Perez as an interpreter as well. Thanks to folks who have gone ahead and introduced themselves in the chat. I will introduce myself again. I am Julie Wood, Deputy Director at Charles River Watershed Association. And I thank you all very much for attending. I am also going to have some of my co-presenters introduce themselves as well. You heard from Erica, thank you. Indrani, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Indrani Ghosh. I am a residency technical leader at Weston and Sampson and is the technical lead for this project working with Julie.
Excellent. Great. Well, thank you for bearing with us for those introductory remarks. Hopefully many of you are familiar with Charles River Watershed Association, but I would be remiss if I didn't take a minute to also introduce our organization. CRWA's mission is to protect, restore, and enhance the Charles River and its watershed through science, advocacy, and the law. Founded in 1965 by concerned residents, so we really have our roots in the grassroots. And it's great to see a lot of residents on the call today to hopefully provide your input, your ideas, your thoughts, your feedback, because this really is intended to be a feedback session. We also always like to start with a land acknowledgement. The Charles River Watershed resides on the occupied territory of the Massachusetts, Nipmuc, and Wampanoag tribes. Sorry. The project team that is joining you tonight is Charles River Watershed Association, Weston and Sampson, our technical design and modeling lead. We also have someone a representative from our partner at Communities Responding to Extreme Weather, or CRWA, our community engagement lead. Actually, and I'll pause. Lee is here joining us to take notes, but Lee, why don't you introduce yourself as well?
Sure. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, Julie. So just, saying a quick hello. My name is Lee Munier, and as Julie mentioned, CRWA is serving as a primary lead as far as community engagement. So some of you may have seen us, actually. We were at the Newton Earth Day Fest a couple weeks ago. And yeah, so just finding yourselves in as many spaces as possible in order to be in deep and meaningful engagement with you all about this project in particular, and also in connection with larger flooding preparedness initiatives. So thank you. Good to be here.
Yes, and thank you, Lee, for helping gather all the input that we received today. The project we're going to be talking about tonight, I kind of zoomed over our intro slide, or quickly went over our intro slide, but is called Building Resilience Across the Charles River Watershed Association. And it involves 20 municipalities across the watershed, of which Newton is one. And we've been working together for about 1.5 years now to address flooding at the regional scale. So I am going to pause quickly for a poll break. Let's see. I am going to hit launch. These are the poll questions. Hopefully they will pop up on your screen and you can select an answer. So have you had a chance to check out the Charles River Flood Model online viewer yet? 1, yes. 2, not yet. 2, do you support local projects to address flooding in your community, even if it may compete for space with other opportunities? So folks want to go ahead and put their poll responses in. All right, we've got about a little more than half folks answered, so I will close the poll. So about 50-50 have had a chance to check out the Flood Model online viewer. Yes and no. We will be dropping the link in the chat in a bit, so everyone knows where to find that. And then are folks supportive of using space for flood storage? Yes, most likely, and it depends. So no one is a no on that. So that's great. That's great to hear. So that is what we will be talking about today. Thank you for your participation in the poll. So a little bit of background. I mentioned that this was a regional effort. It is being undertaken by the Charles River Climate Compact, a group that has since 2019 been coming together to work on climate adaptation as a regional group of communities. In 2021, about a year ago now, we developed the Charles River flood model, which is the screenshot you see on your screen now. It demonstrates where and when to expect flooding under current day and future climate scenarios. And it demonstrates that through these blue lines, or excuse me, these blue blobs that you see on your screen, with the darker blue being deeper flooding and the lighter blue not quite as deep. And when you check it out online, there's a bunch of different scenarios you can check out as far as how far into the future, how intense of a storm, and all sorts of different options. I mentioned this is a project involving 20 communities, so there's the list, many of your neighbors, and then folks upstream in the upper watershed as well. So the current project is funded by the state's Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant Program. The goals of the project are to do some updates to the Charles River flood model that was created last year, to find some flood mitigation project site opportunities, one of which we are going to be talking about today, Albemarle Field. We can then use this flood model that we have developed as a group to understand the impacts of flood storage projects. This is a great opportunity to understand the benefits of a project before any investments are made. We will be developing concept designs for up to 4 opportunity sites. Right now, it's looking like we're going to be looking at 3 sites, and I will show you those in a moment. And then we'll also draft a watershed flood reduction plan that focuses on the whole watershed, in addition to some of these site-specific opportunities we've developed. And we are going to be continuing community engagement. So I'll just pause again and just ask folks to please make sure you're muted. Let's see, can everyone just check that they're muted? Okay, great, thanks. All right, all the joys of Zoom. Okay, so I mentioned we identified 3 priority sites at this stage that we're gonna advance to concept design. I'll talk a little bit more about what even is concept design. But before I get there, how did we identify these sites and how did we pick 3? This is the process that we went through. We looked at what others had done in similar projects. We identified the criteria that we wanted to use in this project to prioritize. Then we collected input from the public via an online survey, what was important to residents. We used all that to develop a scoring methodology or a way to rank the sites. At the same time, we were also looking for site suggestions, and we solicited those both from our partner municipalities, so the 20 participating municipalities, as well as the public. And then we use the methodology to prioritize sites. And so I'll just quickly mention kind of what were we looking for? What makes a good site? We wanted space. We're talking about storing water. Water actually takes up a fair amount of space, which is the problem of flooding. So we wanted enough space to store a meaningful amount of water. We were looking for landowner support, the potential for near-term implementation. So the project that we're talking about tonight, for example, there's some work already planned for this site. So we were looking for sites like that where maybe we could sort of piggyback some flood storage on some projects that are already going on to meet other community needs. Community support, Not a ton of site conflicts, and some of this is still unknown at this stage. Is there contamination? Are there permitting challenges? Does it provide meaningful flood benefits? As a reminder, we can use our Charles River flood model to determine that. Does it protect downstream populations? We were particularly looking for projects that might protect those that are more vulnerable to the impacts of flooding and climate change, climate vulnerable residents, environmental justice neighborhoods, and then strong, excuse me, I mentioned when we did the public survey, the public was really interested in projects that would have environmental co-benefits like habitat restoration, habitat creation, which makes sense when we're working in such urban areas that that might be something people are looking at as a potential co-benefit. So the 3 priority projects we're focusing on right now are the Hardy Pond in Waltham, so not too far away. Oakland Park in Medway, which is similar site to the Albemarle Field. It's a large athletic complex, and then the Albemarle Park. So we are now, that is the background. We are going to transition into the discussion portion of our meeting. I have some introduction, or Indrani and I will tag team on some introduction to some ideas that have already been thrown out from the our technical partners at Weston and Sampson, as well as some pre-meetings with municipal folks. But really this is a chance to get ideas from you folks. You've given up your night to be here, so we're interested in hearing your thoughts. Nothing that's being presented here is, you know, is at that concept plan stage. This is a feedback session, open to feedback. So when we do get into discussion, folks can use the raise hand feature under reactions. Be great if folks wanted to introduce themselves. We are trying to keep this to an hour, but also with the interpretation and with the discussion, it is, these things take time, obviously, but if you can just make sure you're brief with your comments, we appreciate it. So the project location, hopefully everybody is aware. If you found the meeting announcement, it's Albemarle Fields between the Mass Pike and the Charles River, and adjacent to the Cheesecake Brook, which is one of Newton's major tributaries to the Charles. So what even is concept design? It's really kind of what it sounds like, a concept or an idea. It does consider the project goals, basic site information, as well as community needs and desires, again, which is what we hope to hear from you folks today. There is a lot of technical information that is not considered at this stage yet, so definitely some unknowns that you would explore in a future phase of design. How will your feedback be incorporated? You guys are sort of our local experts, and I know some of you are actually with the city, so providing a better understanding of what's going on at the site. Let us know what you think about the ideas we're presenting, what you like, what you not like, what's important that we haven't even mentioned, that we don't even know. That's what we want to hear from you tonight. And we will share all the results of this project at our final project presentation scheduled for June 22nd, which will also be on Zoom. So a quick site description. The site is primarily a large athletic field and recreational complex, lots of different recreational opportunities, as well as a pool. a roadway right next to it, which is where most of the parking is. And then next to that is Cheesecake Brook, which is above ground. So it's not in a pipe in this section of the brook. Upstream, it is in a pipe. But it is channelized, it's completely straight and has armored banks right through the park. Lots of schools in the area. There's been interest from the community level as in improving pedestrian and bike transit. And Dunstan East is just a upcoming development which will make some changes in this same watershed. One of or in the same sub-watershed, but actually right on Cheesecake Brook. There we go. So the blue line there shows the outline of the Cheesecake Brook sub-watershed from a Charles River flood model screenshot. And just lets you know where in that sub-watershed is Albemarle Field. It is pretty far downstream, so that does dictate kind of how much help it can be in flood control. This is a site with some known flooding issues, namely last summer during some intense rain events. That's when this photo that you see was taken. And Weston and Sampson did look briefly at the potential flood impact that this site might have using the Charles River flood model. And they did determine that this site does have some potential to provide flood benefits. And Johnny's gonna get into that a bit more in a further slide, but that was something we looked at before even deciding that this site would be a priority. All right, I will hand it over to you, Indrani.
Thanks a lot, Julie. So as Julie mentioned, we used the site or evaluated the site through the Charles River flood model, looking at it still sort of at a planning level because what the proposed modifications to the site will come out after this discussion and as the concept gets further developed. But in terms of looking at storage options in the site, as well as reducing impervious area, draining to the site as well as at the site, that was evaluated using the model. And the table here on the left shows the percent reduction as well as the total area reduction in terms of flooded area as a result of reduction of impervious area at this at the sub-watershed scale for the Cheesecake Brook. And there is likely to be about an 8% reduction in overall in terms of flooded area. These are all for the 2070 10-year storm. So sort of looking at a futuristic storm event, which is approximately about 6 inches of rain over over a 24-hour period. And with those potential increase of flood storage as well as reduction of impervious area, there is likely to be about 14% reduction in terms of total runoff and flood volume. And expectedly, there could be a 25% reduction in terms of peak flow for that 2070 10-year storm. So in terms of qualitatively assessing the flood mitigation benefits, for this particular site, it was deemed to have a moderate flood storage opportunities available. The current flooding impacts at the site in and around the site are high, as Julie mentioned, from that has been corroborated by historic flood events, and the flood mitigation benefit opportunities are also moderate at the site. So overall, this seemed to be a good candidate site for selection. Julie, do you want me to keep going?
Great. Oops, let's see. I think, yeah, I can take this one and then I'll hand it back to you. Existing conditions, heavily utilized, you know, understand, maybe a little overloved. Obviously the brook has the small linear park. History of flooding, sometimes extreme, just another photo of that, of the example there. These are all of the brook. We know the flooding, or we have heard from city staff, excuse me, that flooding also impacts the park. There is a stormwater pipe that runs under the athletic fields. So with the stormwater pipe coming down to the brook and the brook draining an upstream area, this is essentially like a river confluence right here, with a lot of water coming in at this site. There are many trees, good-looking trees along the park on the outside edge, not too many in the middle, as well as some along the stream as well. We know there's a lot of planning that has been done in this area, probably that many of you have participated in. And so we appreciate, again, your expertise and coming tonight. I listed a few, there's likely more. One important one I just wanted to mention is the athletic field improvement plan. This is a slide pulled from a public meeting last October to look at some potential changes to the athletic field complex. So that is ongoing. We have a fortuitous coincidence where our technical consultant, Weston and Sampson, on this project also happens to be the technical consultant on this athletic field planning process. So some potential ideas. Again, these are just some we're throwing out. Happy to hear more. Underground storage below the athletic fields, surface storage or retention options, maybe some opportunities for co-benefits, storage in stream corridors with potential habitat co-benefits. Just to get the wheels turning, just throwing these ideas out. And I will turn it back over to you, Indrani, to talk a little bit more about the underground storage.
Thank you, Julie. So one of the potential ideas that we would like to present for consideration today is considering underground storage beneath the athletic fields that the city is currently engaged in planning efforts. And we're thinking subsurface infiltration storage chambers with sediment pre-treatment, looking at potentially gravel type subsurface infiltration chambers for both flood storage as well as water quality improvements in terms of potential phosphorus reduction and other water quality improvements could be a consideration for us at this location. We are just showing an example of subsurface infiltration chambers that were recently installed at a park in Cambridge, the Longfellow Park in Cambridge over in the Harvard Square area as part of the park improvements project there. And just as an example that we may want to discuss. And the other second bullet on the slide is potentially if there is an option to divert stormwater from the drainage pipe that flows through the park that is marked out as existing conduit pipe here on this diagram, if there is a potential for flow diversion from that pipe and redirecting that potentially to this underground storage that would provide flood relief and alleviate flooding at the site, as well as provide relief to this underground storage pipe, underground drainage pipe. So sort of that is what we are potentially proposing as a potential concept here.
Great, thank you. Some other potential ideas: green stormwater infrastructure, above ground as well. This is just an image of some green stormwater infrastructure in a park. Permeable surfaces for pathways, maybe even for parking areas. So other ideas, again, want to get to your ideas. Also want to hear site challenges and concerns that folks have. We know it's heavily utilized. You know, if I weren't here, I'd be at a Little League game. So I know how these things go. The soil and groundwater conditions are not fully understood at this time. We've heard, you know, some safety concerns as far as obviously a lot of kids running at full speed on this area. So I want to take that into account. And then of course, always questions, funding, permitting. So how will those, you know, and those are kind of next step questions. And then elevations as well, just as far as where things go, you have to take into account how the water is getting there. Okay, so just some prompt questions on the feedback, although we are really open to hearing what folks have to say. But any concerns or anything we didn't mention that's important to know? What improvements would you like to see? Do you like or not like anything we've suggested? Anyone else we should talk to, or any other comments or concerns? So with that, I'm going to stop the screen share. And remind folks to please just raise your hand if you have comments. Oh, sorry. Folks can mute it again. To kick us off for comments, I'm actually going to invite Maria Rose, who has been helping participating in the Charles River Flood Model Project. Maria, would you like to say anything or mention anything first?
Thank you, Julie. You pretty much hit it, but you know, just that the city is in the process of developing a master plan for the Albemarle Park and Russell Halloran Athletic Field Complex. And you know, given its proximity to Cheesecake Brook, we wanted to see what could be done here that not only could help alleviate a little bit of flooding. You know, obviously it is the downstream segment of this brook, so don't want to oversell that, but the model does show that there could be some benefit depending on the amount of flood storage that could be captured and stored underground and then slowly released and recharged back into the groundwater. You know, but if there are other co-benefits that you've already discussed, like phosphorus reduction, that is something we're keenly interested in because we need to remove a lot of phosphorus from our stormwater. And then any aesthetics that could tie back nicely into a park setting, such as rain gardens and bioretention areas that might just be something nice visually, but also provide a co-benefit of filtering the stormwater runoff. Thank you for your presentation.
Great. All right, if you're just, once again, if you're not speaking, can you please stay muted? I don't see any hands raised yet. Does anyone have any concerns, anything? Margaret, go ahead.
Hi, Julie. So there are artificial turf fields to the west of the park, and there's artificial turf being discussed for the park. And I've been reading some articles about forever chemicals in artificial turf and making it into the watershed. Is that something that will be looked into?
That's not really part of their project, because this is a resiliency project for flood storage. So that's not, I don't think Julie really can't answer that, and neither can the Weston and Sampson team that's here. But I see Luis just popped up. Maybe Luis's face, he's here, but he just put his video up. So maybe you want to address that.
Hi, Maria, and hi, Margaret. So should there be any synthetic turf fields, moving forward at Albemarle, we would certainly look at as many options for that as possible, which means studying the materials and any infill that might be included in that. So to Maria's point, not part of this project, synthetic turf would be the park project that would be looking at that kind of stuff.
I could also just add that back, I don't know how many years ago now, when Newton South High School proposed an artificial turf field, we were required to do a significant amount of testing at the surface. There were wipe samples. There was samples in the wetlands adjacent to it to see if crumb rubber made its way there. We had wells that we tested, and there was nothing shown to leach into the groundwater or the soil that we saw from our monitoring over a 5-year time period. So just to add that.
Okay, great. Nancy.
Hi, I'm Nancy Morrison, a Newton resident, and I'm not very familiar with this location, and I'm also very unfamiliar with this topic, but I'm just curious. You mentioned below ground water storage, and you mentioned above ground modifications, and I wonder whether those are mutually exclusive or whether all of the above can be done.
Not mutually exclusive, no. No, yes, definitely all ideas on the table, a combination of ideas. Definitely looking to continue to have the site serve the needs of residents and also maximize any potential flood storage opportunities. So we're looking at, really any combination, fitting things in among the layout of the recreational fields, whatever we can do to kind of maximize that flood protection, flood storage, really. Margaret.
So the neighbor to the west of the field is the Fessenden School, and it's at a much higher elevation than the park. Have you engaged them in any of these discussions? Because a lot of runoff comes down the hill from that area into the brook and not just from the fields.
No, we have not heard from them, unless anyone from the school is on this meeting. No, we have not. For this particular site, it is primarily looking at what comes down from the upper watershed, what comes down via the brook, and then what comes in from the opposite side, basically from the stormwater drain that comes down, that cuts across the existing athletic field. So that's primarily the tributary areas we're looking at. Maria.
Yeah, just to provide some context for Councilor Albright, the communities that were participating in this MVP grant. So I don't know if you said that at the beginning. This is a you did? Okay. MVP Municipal Vulnerabilities Program grant. And all the participating communities were encouraged to submit an idea or two for consideration. And so we submitted the idea of there is an existing 30-inch diameter storm drain pipe that runs through this park. And so it's an opportunity to make an improvement, since we're already looking at doing some renovations of these fields. So that's why it's only focusing on the park itself and not surrounding area from the Fezzidan School. It's specifically looking at how could we take and divert some of the flow of stormwater runoff from the upper, or really just a little bit further upstream of this, and cleanse it through natural infiltration and have less of an impact into the brook volume-wise at this very specific location. So this was the idea that now Weston and Sampson and CRWA are they've already evaluated it, and it made the cut out of what, 40 projects that were submitted, or 40 ideas?
Yes.
So we made the cut out of all these different project ideas that were submitted, and now they're flushing it out and working on developing this conceptual design. And it's part of the MVP process. They have a June 30th deadline to develop the conceptual design plan.
So just a follow-on question, there are paved swales that go into the brook as well as the pipe. Would those be eliminated as part of this plan?
We could certainly take that suggestion. Are you suggesting that that might be a good thing to catch?
Yeah, there's probably 3 or 4 paved swales that go from the roadway right into the brook.
Yes, we've mentioned that to the team. That's something to consider, that something small along the channel there. It may not be done at the same time as the park project. It could, we'd have to decide, there's funding issues and other things to consider. But certainly if we had all the concepts on a plan, we could pick at which parts we're able to do. But we've certainly thought about that option.
Jonathan.
Oh, hi, good evening. Thank you for doing this and working on this with the city. I work in the mayor's office, and I've been in this field for a long time, water resources management, and former school committee member Albright is a direct neighbor. And I believe, Maria, thank you for answering her questions. I think this 30-inch pipe comes from near her house over underneath the field and into the brook. I think what we're working on a phased improvement to the park in the fields, where we have a great pressure for field space and high quality field space across the city. And Luis and his team are working with Weston and Sampson and the commissioner and the Parks and Rec Commission to really make these improvements relatively soon. So I think that we're looking forward to hearing what comes out of this in June. As Maria has mentioned, we were looking at opportunities. What could we do at the same time? I think if you did ask what concerns we might have. And I think 2 of my concerns are, number 1, timing, and how quickly could we do something like what Cambridge did underneath Longfellow Park there, and cost. And ideally there would be state grants to help fund some of these kinds of special projects. How quickly could we get access to that? Could that all be done in concert with Luis's work on the fields? I mean, those are some of the things that we're going to need to think through. But we're very interested in getting ideas in June. Margaret, I think the direct discharges along the actual roadway into the stream are probably something we'll deal with when we're redoing the road in a much bigger way in years to come. That's definitely going to need to happen. We need to get rid of those direct discharges where possible. And I think we all need to remember that this is a heavily impervious covered watershed. It's got the Mass Turnpike and lots of roads and highways in it. And it's always going to be really challenging to deal with flooding down in this area of the brook. And so we do need to look at a range of ideas for storage. And then, as Maria said, we need some phosphorus reduction too to meet our NIPD's permits. So there's a couple things going on here, and we're looking forward to getting ideas. And thank you, CRWA and crew, for working on this with us.
Yeah, thank you. No, I love when we love it when someone else is rushing the project. Indrani, did you want to just say anything briefly about timing or grants?
Sorry, can you just repeat that?
Did you want to comment at all about the concerns over timing and future funding?
Oh, especially if she knows where the money is hidden, and that would be great. Comment.
Thank you for that question. I think the MVP action grants that the state has ongoing, the call closed earlier in the month, but I think that definitely could be an opportunity or option for the city to consider in future years to advance the design, as well as potentially, looking at other funding opportunities such as the FEMA BRIC grant could be some other potential options to consider for moving, for not only just advancing to final design, but also potential construction funds.
Great. Any ideas you have that would be great, fully accepted.
Great. And Julie Minkin has her hand up.
Hi. Thank you for taking my question. It's a simple one. It's not even a question. It's more just a thought. With all the standing water, because you're going to be collecting water either underground or in above ground containers, is that going to cause a lot of bugs, mosquitoes, gnats, already currently without anything along the Cheesecake Brook? There are a lot of gnats. They seem to be getting worse and worse each year too. I'm not exactly sure why, whether it's like algae growing in there from some of the runoff water or whatnot. But that's just one thing that I think we need to keep in mind, especially because they're fields and kids are playing their sports and all of that. So
yes, absolutely. And I know it's a field with lights as well, so people are there at dusk and into the night. Yeah, so great concern to raise, and definitely not surprised it came to mind, because we are talking about holding water. So to address that concern, we would want to make sure that the water is not standing and stagnant for any extended period of time. And flooding concerns really are essentially a timing issue. You really have too much water in one place at the same time. So some of the opportunities we're looking at allow us to divert that, hold it out of the area where flooding would potentially occur. But you of course would want to make sure that is shorter term and that the water is either going into the grounds or moving through a system. And so those are definitely all things to be considered in system design. Yes, and of course that's with kids being there in the evening, that's definitely something to keep in mind. And any other technical comments on that, Indrani?
I was going to say that we're not necessarily considering holding it for a long period of time. As Maria and Julie both mentioned, it's making sure that we're holding it at the peak of the storm and then letting it gradually, slowly releasing it with some retention opportunities, but slowly releasing it after the height of the peak of the storm passes and releasing it slowly back into the drainage system. So that could potentially minimize some of the concerns related to extended storage and potential issues with mosquitoes and insects.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. We have a comment in the chat from Susan Lynch. A few years ago, CRWA held a meeting that discussed returning the brook to its natural state through Albemarle. Is that part of this project? No, that is not part of this project. As you'll remember or just a reminder, I went through the slides kind of fast, but one of the main prioritization features for this particular initiative were things that could be implemented in the relative near term. Now, we kind of scoped that out, maybe 3 years, maybe 5 years. I'm excited to hear from Jonathan's comments that the city maybe want to move even quicker. So for this particular initiative and this effort, we are mostly focused on the area that is being looked at the athletic fields as part of the athletic fields improvement projects. Now, not to say that some longer term visions, can still be on the table or ideas. A lot of this work, as far as just big picture, this climate flood planning work, a lot of this work is finding what you can do now that can have near-term benefits, while you're also planning for projects that might help when you get bigger storms. So in the flood model, we looked at 2030 flood impacts and 2070 flood impacts. The potential 2070 flood impacts are obviously more severe. We expect the climate to have changed more by then. But we also have some time. We have some time to work on and implement projects that might be more ambitious, might have more need for resident involvement, whatever the case may be. So tonight we're talking about the more near-term focus of integrating it into the athletic fields, while we also look at opportunities in Newton and elsewhere to make some of those bigger picture changes. And Lee.
Yeah, I guess I have a comment and a question. I'll start off with the question, which is, and this is actually informed by having now been in other municipalities as part of this project and listening to what other residents have shared as far as kind of thinking more holistically. And so, for instance, in Arlington, they were asking a lot of questions around the way in which some of the park spaces, have irrigation systems set up. And then you're going to put in some of these mechanisms to hold water. So I guess just this might be something that can't necessarily be investigated here tonight, but I guess I'm curious how that area is irrigated and if there's any considerations about the ways in which the water that's being held there could be replacing the water that's used for irrigation. So thinking about gray water systems. So I'll start there. I had another thing, but that piece.
Great point. Yes, that is on the list as the list of opportunities. Yeah, great point.
Cool. And then the other thing, I just making a note only because I'm also involved with other projects along Albemarle Road that are related to, and I think Maria, you and I might have talked about this briefly at the Earth Day Fest. I know Neighborways is a group that does street design and is working a lot with the Director of Transportation around reimagining the streetscape there for bike infrastructure. And people were talking earlier about kids kind of crossing a lot and changing the parking situation. So I think, Julie, you were just asking earlier about other groups to sort of be in dialogue with. And so I think for sure, definitely being in touch with the transportation department of the city because they're doing a bunch of different redesigns around parking and again, that bike infrastructure, and then even a group like Neighborways to just be in dialogue around what the especially the short-term plans are.
Great.
Yeah, we can take that into consideration. Again, this has like 6 weeks left of this project, and how it gets funded from there is an unknown. So But yeah, we can consider that.
So we are coming up on our time. I can certainly stay on if folks have more comments. I am just going to put the link in the chat to the Charles River flood model viewer. Okay, so hopefully everyone has that. It is also available on CRWA's website. But please check it out, browse around, check this site, other sites. I would also just like to really thank our interpreters, Erica and Carolina. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here tonight and providing this wonderful service to allow us to reach more people. So I really appreciate it. And apologies for the technical troubles, Carolina, getting you added, but so happy you could both join us. And we got it all recorded, so that will be available. Maria, did you want to have some closing comments or?
Oh, I was just going to type it in the chat. I have a Boy Scout to talk to about a project, so I got to jump off. So I'm already a couple minutes late. Thanks. Okay. Bye.
Thank you. Great. So I think we are officially concluded, but I am happy to stay on if folks want to share more ideas. If you're someone who doesn't like talking in a big group, you are also welcome to send your comments via email. We will send a follow-up email with the recording to everyone who attended and everyone who registered today, not just everyone who attended. You're welcome to pass that along to anyone in your network. It'll also have my email address, as well as an online form where you can provide additional information. Okay. All right. Great. Well, thank you all, project team, as well.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and thank you, Andrani, for making the last minute slide changes.
Yep, no worries at all. Thank you. Thank you for leading the discussion.
I will stop the recording.